In this video, we are going to be talking about the hottest NFT news that you need to know right now. So buckle up and let's go ahead and dive right in. The first thing that I actually want to talk about is going to be MapleStory Universe. Now, this is MapleStory's announcement going into NFTs. And if you haven't played MapleStory before, it was one of the most popular games, especially when I was younger. I played this game quite a lot. And now they're moving into NFTs, right? So MapleStory is a game under Nexon, which is basically one of the pioneers when it comes to, a free-to-play game with in-app monetization. They had like the Nexon store and all these things. So it's interesting to see them moving into NFTs. And I think it was pretty much inevitable for this to happen. And so here we are. So one of the things that make MapleStory really interesting is that at the time when it was like super popular, especially the 2D version, right now there's a 3D version that I think not many people talk about too much. So we're going to focus on 2D version, which is like this 20-year-old game essentially. Basically, what made that game interesting was that there was really like a economy where people were actually playing to earn, meaning they would like kill monsters, gain metals, which is like the in-game currency back in the day. And then from there, they can like sell the different items. And there was literally like free markets where people can buy and sell their items that they got. You can set up a shop. And so it was literally like one of the first like OG economies in a world, right? For me, when I look at this, it's really interesting that MapleStory moved into the space because I think it has one of the better shots at building like a metaverse. And so what does that mean exactly? When I say metaverse, it's really just like technically anything in digital, in my opinion, is like metaverse, but like a world, like a universe that people can interact with or potentially earn with, right? So with MapleStory, what's interesting is that if you think about all the blockchain gaming projects out there, right? Typically what happens is that maybe they have a concept, they'll sell some NFTs, they'll sell a token to fundraise for their game. And then who knows when the game will come out because it takes years and years and years to build a game, especially if somebody wants to build an MMORPG, something like World of Warcraft, right? Which for a lot of these projects, they're never going to come out, to be honest. So that's one route people can take. And the problem with that is that the founders and investors who sell the tokens pretty much get rich from selling you these things, and then you don't even know if the game's going to come out, which is very bad for the holder. And the other thing that people also do is like a blockchain gaming company might have blockchain infrastructure, and then they might go to different studios that may be interested in doing a Web3 game, but they don't know anything about blockchain. And so they basically come together and like kind of basically get a Web2 game and reskin it and add blockchain technology. And that's pretty much what they're selling when they're selling the coins and NFTs. It's debatable because, a lot of the games that these blockchain companies partner with, these games would have made it in Web2 anyways, but because it's blockchain, it becomes more popular, right? So that's kind of like the state of where kind of a lot of these games are. So with MapleStory is interesting because the game had already existed for 20 years now, right? And it was a very successful game, especially back in the day. And I think people do still play it now. So they actually don't have to create a whole new game. They have literally like decades of lore, art, and items and all these things. And they're basically just taking that and adding the blockchain element to it. So you don't have to worry about, is this game coming out? Because there already is a game that has successfully been proven to work in the past, and they're just trying to bring it back to life. There are people actually still playing MapleStory now, so they're just adding the blockchain element. So how it works is that, there's going to be MapleStory N, which I believe is like the main game. MapleStory and Mobile, which is the mobile version of the game, right? You can play on that on the phone. Basically same game with blockchain. And the other two modes are going to be Mode N. So Mode N is kind of like Sandbox, right? It's like, like Sandbox platform where you have a place that you can build stuff in. They give you all the assets and you can put things together. And if you have different NFTs, you can put them into your experience, right? And the way I think about it is for that kind of thing, let's say if you ever played Warcraft 3, for example, right? They had the regular game and then they had these custom modes where they give you all the assets and you can create different games. And in fact, a lot of people don't know this, but Dota, right, which is one of the most popular and highest grossing games in the entire world, actually stemmed from a custom game, Dota, right, on, as a Warcraft custom mod, right? And so by giving the creators the ability to use the assets to create these, universes, it can create potentially interesting games that may become big in the future, right? So that's going to be something like experiences people create using MapleStory assets, which they have so much of. And then they have an SDK, to just make it like simple to understand what SDK is basically you're going to be able to take, some of their assets and their tech and implement it into your app, right? So for example, if you were building an alarm clock for the App Store and, you wanted to use MapleStory assets in your alarm clock, you'd be able to do that using this SDK, right? And maybe if you have different NFTs, that alarm clock could have different features based on, which NFT you have. That's just one example. It could be like a running app using MapleStory stuff. So it's really limitless in that sense. Think of it like a tool that allows you to use MapleStory assets into your actual app. And I'm sure MapleStory Universe, they're going to make money off of your stuff because they allowed you to use their IP and stuff like that. But that's just how they're building that ecosystem. So it's one of the better examples of a Web2 company moving into Web3, where it's not just taking a game and just putting blockchain on it, which is, they're doing that essentially, but they're also allowing people to become creators within this economy. And in this particular video, it's a 20-minute video. They didn't go too in deep into how the tokenomics and everything will work, but the whole idea is that there's assets in the game that you can use in other games and other things like your SDK and your mods and stuff like that. And then, they're going to try to see if they can implement those assets into other games within that MapleStory universe. And one thing that's particularly interesting about this video is that they said they're not going to sell tokens. They're not going to sell NFT as items. You have to actually earn it in the game. So they're not really trying to make money selling you items and hoping that one day these things will be valuable one day. They're just saying like, hey, play the game, earn some stuff, and you can make some money on it, right? They even use the word like revenue sharing in this video, which is very interesting from an SEC perspective. So I don't know how the whole legality of these things work. I'm sure Nexon is a huge company. I'm sure they have the right lawyers and legal team to make it all work, hopefully. So this is a project I am definitely following for sure. Now, speaking of Web 2 companies moving into Web 3, let's talk about Pokemon. So recently, Pokemon put out a job position on a job board where they're looking for a Web3 expert, right? And so it seems like what they're doing is they're looking for an expert to kind of help them be guided through this whole Web3 space, because we've seen a lot of Web2 brands go into Web3 and it's just kind of lackluster. And the reason for that, in my personal opinion, being behind the scenes is because usually there's like a Web2 agency that already has these existing connections, whether it's to a luxury car company, a luxury brand, and sometimes these Web3 agencies don't really know what they're doing. They're not really buying NFTs. They just kind of say they know what they're doing. And so because they already have that existing relationship, they just come out with some whack NFT and it just flops because they don't know what they're doing, right? That's typically how it works. So Pokemon obviously doesn't want to take a risk in terms of ruining their reputation. This is a pretty big job title, right? This is corporate development principal, president and corporate development office. So someone to really lead the team over at Pokemon and basically test new ideas to see what is possible, right? So that's what I'm getting from this. It's a pretty general role, right? Technology, marketing, finance. Total work experience, must be 12 years work experience, 7 years in corporate development. So it's really important for this person to have a deep knowledge of understanding of NFTs. Base salary, 150K to 224K, okay. So yeah, they're looking for people, right? So I don't think they're going to launch anything soon. That's my guess, because they want to take their time with it. I don't think they're in a rush to do it because in a way they already created their own metaverse when it comes to like Pokemon Go and all the entire Pokemon IPs, which is one of the most valuable IPs in the entire world. So I don't think they're in a rush to do it, but I can definitely see like them spending a small amount of resources to see what's possible. And then when the time comes, they can definitely go all in by first gaining a little bit more experience, right? And the interesting part about Pokemon is like they don't need to like crowdfund money to like, raise or do a token or sell an NFT, just like how Nexon doesn't really have to do it because they already have revenue. So yeah, Pokemon's going to NFTs, Nexon's going to NFT, everyone is going into NFTs. So if you want to say NFTs are dead or it's a scam, you got to call Nexon and Pokemon a scam as well. All right, speaking of other Web2 companies successfully going to NFTs, Starbucks recently sold 2,000 NFTs in 20 minutes. So basically what it was like this stamp, this collectible, and each one is going to cost $1, right? So it's, a few $100,000 in sales, which is not bad because the way I see it is they're selling these collectibles that not really promising like the world or anything. They're able to generate some revenue. It's not super significant. Starbucks makes a lot of money selling coffee, right? But it's a start and they're able to do this successfully, drop after drop after drop. And so they're definitely doing it right, with these collectibles. And of course, their user base is huge, but at the same time, you got to understand like there are a lot of huge companies that try to do NFTs and they just completely flop. So the fact that Starbucks is taking their time selling these small collections and making like hundreds of thousands on these drops definitely is a bullish sign, because over time, as more people use the Starbucks Odyssey program, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be selling these stamps that come with a limited edition something and then, make $1 million on a drop, right? So like I definitely see Starbucks crushing it when it comes to the corporate side of how NFTs can be implemented without doing PFPs, doing like digital collectibles. So definitely an example to look at if you're, a founder and you kind of want to, take inspiration from that. Man, so many Web2 companies moving to Web3. Now we're going to be talking about Lego partnering up with EpicGames. Now this announcement is not saying they're going to do NFTs or crypto. It's just saying like Lego wants to do their own like metaverse thing. And I think like Lego's a huge brand, right? They probably are thinking of like, hey, how do we do something like Sandbox, which is like that Web3 project? How do we do something like Roblox? Or how do we do something like Minecraft, right? So they're probably thinking in that direction. And plus like Legos, it makes the most sense to build like a metaverse world where people can build and do anything they want. So that definitely does make sense. And by partnering with someone that has experience building games, makes a lot of sense. Now, if this was a blockchain game, could potentially be in the future, or maybe they'll implement some of those technologies into this without calling it NFTs. That's definitely a possibility, but we definitely see this whole idea of the metaverse popping off. And again, like metaverse, a lot of people associate it with like specifically Web3, like it has to be crypto. I don't think that's the case, because truthfully, right, a lot of Web3 projects are really centralized. So the whole idea of like being decentralized doesn't even exist, right? It just happened to be on the blockchain. So for me, the metaverse is really just like living your life online or digitally, right? We're all in the metaverse when we're using Twitter. when we're using Discord, we're on these chat rooms. That is actually the metaverse. It's just not the whole like VR experience that people thought it would be, but in a sense, we all connect online. A lot of my friends I've met, especially over the past year, have been online, you know, doing Discord like calls and stuff like that. It's interesting to see like the whole idea of what the metaverse is constantly being reinterpreted. Okay, so next piece of news that we have is Instagram pauses its NFT plans. Instagram had like the whole like digital identity kind of thing going on. I don't even know exactly what it was because like nobody used it. So now they're shutting that down. So it kind of is interesting that Instagram is kind of like taking a foot back away from NFTs. And I think they were trying to capture that market because it was growing so quickly, but you know, it just didn't happen. So now they kind of had to refocus their resources and other things, right? I mean, if you kind of look at the stock, you know, obviously when Meta kind of went down pretty hard from 333 to all the way to like less than $100, now it's kind of going back up, right? Because I mean, Facebook makes a lot of money on advertisements and Instagram and stuff like that, right? But I guess with this whole refocus and shift, maybe that's more bullish sign for Facebook. The Facebook team, Mark Zuckerberg, like they're killers, right? So like, you know, regardless of what the stock price looks like, I'm pretty sure that they will find a way. A lot of people are like, hey, you never should bet on Zuck, and you know, that could be a thing. And so that's everything we got to cover in the news. A lot of Web3 brands moving into Web2. NFTs definitely are slowing down, or have been slowed down, especially during the bear, but a lot of people are building, and this is a time to build. So if you are a builder, make sure that you keep your foundation straight, keep doing what you're doing, because the time will come. With that said, that's everything we got to cover for this video, and I will see you in the next one.